Welcome, everybody, to the Grueling Truths live Fight Night recap. Of course, on the Grueling Truth Radio Network, brought to you by mybookie.ag. And if you threw up some money on DeGale-Truex today, you're probably not listening to us because you're headed for a beach somewhere, especially if you live in the Midwest. I'm your host for the live Fight Night recap, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my other co-host, who on a Saturday nights lives are so bad that they're sitting here talking live boxing with me. First off, we'll start with Jeremiah Pricer. How you doing, Jeremiah?
Doing very, very well. Let's talk some boxing, fellas.
Also, of course, our resident lawyer, just in case Jeremiah cusses too much and the FCC cracks down on us, John Einreinhofer. How you doing, John?
Good to be here, Mike, even though it's in the late hour. And since we're recorded and we're not over the airwaves here, the FCC doesn't apply to us. So I'm doing my lawyer thing for the night already.
All right. See, That's why we've got him here. All right, and next up, he wrote one of the best boxing books of the last couple years, Intimate Warfare with Dennis Taylor. Pictures by Ed Mulholland, I believe. Help us welcome to the show a man who, where he's at, it's only 8:55. John Raspani. How you doing, John?
Right, 8:56 there, Coach, so get it right. Yeah, no, hey, great pleasure to be with you guys in such elite company. So let's get it on and talk about what was going on today.
All right, we're going to start off with what just happened. Vasil Lomachenko made Guillermo-Rigondeaux tap out between the 6th and 7th rounds. I thought this was a mismatch to begin with, Jeremiah. I know you did, since you're in love with Lomachenko. What was your take on the fight and the ending?
Well, I think my love is justified more and more as, you know, we see this guy in action. But, I mean, I figured it was a mismatch, but, I mean, this big, I wasn't convinced. I mean, you know, I'm a big Lomachenko fan, but to see Rigondeaux dominated in this fashion was quite surprising, because when you look at his defensive posture against most of the guys that he's ever competed with, he's slick. I mean, he's got good footwork. You know, he'll duck real low like he was doing a lot tonight, but then he would pivot and kind of slide under and reposition himself. But against Lomachenko, I don't know if he was wary of Lomachenko's quick foot movement, you know, afraid that he couldn't get away with that kind of stuff. But it seemed like he was just hesitant, and he crouched a bunch. And, you know, that, of course, led to some problems. You know, Lomachenko was, you know, there was some holding, but Lomachenko figured it all out. I mean, he landed a lot of right hands. He did what he was supposed to do there. You know, unfortunately, Rigondeaux got a point deduction because of the holding. But it was just, you know, I figured that Rigondeaux was going to throw a lot more end range. I mean, Lomachenko is obviously a slick guy, you know, one of the slickest, probably the slickest fighter in boxing currently. But, you know, Rigondeaux has superb accuracy when he's on, and his left hand is phenomenal, but he just looked confused. I mean, Lomachenko was slipping and sliding and readjusting himself, and he looked fantastic. I mean, I was impressed. But, you know, we've also got to look on the flip side there, and I'll let the other guys elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, and Rigondeaux seemed like if he broke his hand or his knuckles, it had to be on the cup of Lomachenko, because John Einreinhofer, I don't remember him landing a punch above the belt.
No, Rigondeaux didn't look overly committed to me after the first round. You know, Lomachenko, of course, is extremely skilled and, you know, capable of making adjustments, but you know, Rigondeaux, even though not a lot happened, I gave Rigondeaux the first round. I thought he did pretty good moving forward. And then before Lomachenko even really started adjusting or opening up more, it just looked like to me like Rigondeaux, you know, didn't want to do it. And like, in other words, he didn't want to move forward. And that's where you saw some of those amateur type tendencies. You know, he's 37 years old. He's only had 17 pro fights. And, you know, of course, all those amateur fights, and just kind of didn't want to, you know, go into a pro type of style where maybe he had to adjust and come after Lomachenko a little more or something like that. And then Lomachenko started landing. And, you know, of course, it's always hindsight, but you do have to sometimes look at hindsight when you're analyzing these things. You know, you saw Rigondeaux do tonight the same thing he was doing against Chucky Flores, when he got disqualified and then we went through all that, the grabbing the back of the head to try to punch, like he couldn't land a solid punch without grabbing Flores behind the head. And he started trying to do that to Lomachenko tonight too. And I'm not going to try to take everything away from Rigondeaux, but let's face it, that's not great technical boxing. And we did see the same thing early on in Flores, like he couldn't land a solid shot without grabbing Flores behind the head, and he started trying to do it to Lomachenko. So, again, a little bit of hindsight in there, but considering this is in the lower weights, the guy's 37 years old, Lomachenko 29, probably a lot of the difference right there.
Yeah, and John Raspani, my other question is this. Going into this fight, I didn't think it was competitive just because you had a guy in Rigondeaux who hadn't really fought high-level competition in 3 or 4 years. And to me, with the age of 37 on top of it, I didn't see how he would be able to do anything, especially moving up 2 weight classes. And I think that played itself out tonight.
Yes, it did. It did, Mike. And I thought it was going to be more competitive, at least in the first few rounds. I'd say the first 3 or 4 rounds. I thought it would be a chess match and more competitive. But I agree with what everybody else is saying. To me, it was reminiscent. I was thinking about when Rigondeaux fought Nonito Donaire, and he did what Lomo did to him in the sense that he dominated Donaire until getting knocked down. But still, he toyed with him in a sense. And that's what, by the 3rd or 4th round, that's what Lomachenko was doing. You could tell he was like, it was almost like he was saying, this is it. This is the best you can do, is occasionally throw a left hand at me and I'll duck it, and then I'll move in and I'll feint and I'll duck and I'll sweep and I'll move over here and then I'll tap you with some jabs and I'll come over with a right hand. It got to be where it was almost an exhibition of just superior skill. And I don't think Rigondeaux was prepared for that. I think what was going on there was mentally his ego, and that's why ultimately he has quit. He couldn't handle it. He'd never had anybody do this to him, and he was looking for a way out. We're probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but that's what I saw going on. But I certainly was surprised when that happened. But Lomachenko is what he is, and I'm with Jeremiah. I love to watch the guy fight. I think he's changed his style a little bit since he started. He's gotten more aggressive since the beginning. He takes more chances now. He wants to please everybody. He's a bit of a showboat, which always cracks me up. Some of the things he does. Yeah, he's confident, but he should be with all that talent. So the guy is a joy to watch. But going back to your original question, Mike, I disagree with you in the sense that I thought it was going to be more competitive, but ultimately, and I hate to admit this, but it looks like you guys had it more pegged than I did, that it was more of a mismatch, because ultimately that's what it turned out to be, a mismatch.
Yeah, I just wish you'd have quit around later, because then I would have nailed it. But before we get to that, I'm going to tell people there is an opportunity to call in if you want to make any comments, ask any questions tonight. Our phone number is 812-496-0852. Now, I can tell you this. All the live shows we've done, we haven't taken callers yet. So when you call, you never know what you're going to get, because we haven't even done a dry run on this yet. But that's Jeremiah's fault, because sometimes he gets lazy. So when we look at these fights, or this fight tonight, I thought there was another man in the ring as impressive as Lomachenko, and that was referee Steve Willis, who didn't let Rigondeaux get around with all the crap that he normally does. He even took a point away in round 6. And I think that right then, Jeremiah, Rigondeaux realized that he's not going to be able to do what he normally does to be able to try to win this fight.
Yeah, I think that certainly took some wind out of his sails. It's it's one of those things where you see him get away with it, in his last fight and other fights before it, and typically he didn't need to do that. I mean, holding really isn't. It was different in other fights, where in the sense that he would hold a guy because they got close and it sort of stymied their offense. But in this fight, he was holding for an entirely different reason. He was holding to stymie Lomachenko's offense, but it was just so overpowering. And Wills did a great job. I mean, he's always done a good job, at least from the fights that I've seen. Give him time. It seems like all refs, at some point have an off night, but, don't want to hold that too much against him. But it's, he did a good job. I mean, Rigondeaux was just slowing down the already slow action with his holding, and nobody really wanted to see it. And then Lomachenko, to his credit, and this is what I like. I mean, after the Salido fight, in my opinion, he graduated after that fight. The dirty tactics, just the entire event, the way the things went down in that fight. He just learned from it, absorbed it really, really well, and integrated it into his IQ. And, that's why when guys hold him, you see him pull his arms away like he does. If he gets hit low, he gestures to the ref. It's all smart play by him. And, Rigondeaux, he just didn't have any answers. I mean, typically Rigondeaux is able to kind of feel you out with the right hand, and then he'll time you with the left hand. And when you're fighting a guy of Lomachenko's ilk, you cannot be that simplistic. No matter how good your one dimension may be, it's just not enough for a guy like Lomachenko. And once he realized that he couldn't implement that strategy, I just think he was at a loss. But like Responti said, and I think like a lot of us know, his ego was crushed. It was just he's used to schooling guys. I mean, Nonito Donaire, when he fought him, was what I think number 5, number 4, maybe number 3 pound for pound on the Rings rankings. So he was used to getting his way with just about everybody. But Lomachenko, he's just a different animal. And besides Mikey Garcia, I don't see anybody messing with him.
Yeah, and I think
let me chime in for a moment that Tevin Farmer just got derailed in a controversial decision here. So go ahead back to the Rigondeaux fight, but that was Lomo, but that was a surprise.
Tevin Farmer, wasn't he a New Edition back in the 80s?
Yeah, 18-fight winning streak, I think it was, but that just got derailed. But
all right, so
Harold Letterman had another way off card, or the judges were way off.
Well, Larry Farmer.
Yeah, Larry Farmer, old UCLA basketball coach.
That's right.
That's actually who I think of every time I hear the name Tevin Farmer, by the way.
Popped into my head, Larry Farmer.
Yeah. So the other thing that struck me, John Einreinhofer, is this. When you'd see Rigondeaux grab people before, you hardly ever see anybody yank away and pop him with a right hook in the jaw. I just think in the long run, you had two technically skilled fighters, but one was physically just stronger than the other one.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's good points everyone's making about the Rigondeaux holding, and then Will's not letting him get away with it. Not that would have made a difference in the fight. I agree there, Mike. But sometimes certain refs will let guys get away with tactics and that they shouldn't be, and it does make a difference. And Rigondeaux got shut down from that. We remember, of course, Vladimir Klitschko with a lot of the holding. I remember Julio Cesar Chavez was always allowed to get away with, hitting guys with left hooks behind.
Well, yeah, he was a Don King fighter with Don King referees.
Right. I mean, a lot of guys got forced down with the left hook below the belt.
Judges.
Chavez, that just the referees never did anything about. So it can add up and be a factor. So that was just another thing that it was fair, but went against Rigondeaux. But then overall, I always worry about the state of boxing, what's being put out there. This is an ESPN card, and of course, Top Rank's responsible for what's on there. And even though we were all watching the main event and two highly regarded guys, that didn't work out well, and the undercard wasn't good. So not great. Basic cable exposure for boxing, and I always hate to see that. I like to see those opportunities better utilized.
All right, so we're going to do this. We're going to wrap this part of the show up with this fight. I'm going to go around. I'm going to give each one of you a shot. Who do you want? Who can beat Lomachenko, or who do you think has the best chance, John Raspani?
It's a damn good question, Mike. I really want to see Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia in there because I think Mikey is very strong mentally.
Yeah.
And I don't see him quitting. I don't. I do see Lomachenko doing a lot of what he's doing because he's so quick. And I know we all know this and it's cliche, but speed kills, and he's got it, and he makes guys look like fools. But Mikey Garcia, and the other thing that I got to say is that Lomachenko is really, really an intelligent fighter. I mean, he knew what Rigondeaux was going to do with the holding and everything, and he mentioned it to Steve Willis. We saw all that. So you talk about going to school. He knew what was coming, and he used it to his advantage. Mikey Garcia is another cerebral fighter to me. So he will do everything he can to figure out a plan to fight Lomachenko, and he will be the bigger guy in there, I think, a little bit, not by much. But I think they're both like 5'7", but Mikey would be probably bigger as far as weight on fight night. Not that necessarily matter, but I think that would be a hell of a fight, even though I do think that Lomachenko would win it, even though it would be a good fight. But Mikey can punch, but you got to be able to hit Lomachenko, and he's like an invisible man in there sometimes. So I like that one. That's the only one I see there with Bud Crawford moving up to 147. I really wanted to see that. I would have loved to have seen Crawford and Lomachenko. Again, Lomachenko would have had to move up. But in where he is now, there isn't anybody who could beat him.
All right, John Einreinhofer?
Yeah, I agree with John Responte. Mikey Garcia is always a guy that I felt has a chance to beat him. Of course, he's in that weight range. All these other 130-pound guys that make good action fights that are around that division now are made to order for Lomachenko, so you can disqualify all of them. Those are mismatches style-wise. Even the good featherweights, the guy that's not a mismatch style-wise, Gary Russell Jr., Lomachenko already beat, so he's out, basically, and you have TV and promotional issues there. You do with the other guys as well, but Frampton and Santa Cruz can't do anything with him style-wise. So then, as you say, Crawford moving up, he's kind of out of the region. It's funny because Lomachenko had talked about Pacquiao a couple of years ago, and with Pacquiao getting old, it certainly was a winnable fight to me for Lomachenko, even with the big move up in weight. And I'm just thinking if Crawford hadn't gotten there first, since these guys are all with Top Rank, it certainly wouldn't. If you want to go with something really reaching out, but I wouldn't see Jeff Horn have any shot of beating Lomachenko if he wanted to move way up. But Crawford's going to get there first, and I think he'll massacre Horn. So that'll be out. I think at 147 pounds, Crawford would be too big for Lomachenko. So. Mikey Garcia's over, though, now with, Al Heyman and the PBC guys and Showtime. So, and ironically, he was with Top Rank. And, so I don't know. And I just don't like the way Top Rank does things. I mean, we're talking about things that should be speculated about and will be speculated about. But unless it becomes to a point where there's huge, huge money there, the Top Rank MO is just to parade their name guys out there in mismatches, and they just don't care. They hype it up as we're supposed to enjoy just seeing this particular fighter. And look at what Arum does with Gilberto Ramirez, Oscar Valdez. These guys are fighting nobody on these Top Rank cards. They're just saying it for a WBO title, and the way Top Rank does things, they'll do the same thing with Lomachenko. I mean, who knows? Maybe if Salido wins this fight tonight, he'll go in with Lomachenko just for the payday. We all know that'll be a mismatch, but again, the way Top Rank does things, why wouldn't we see something like that?
All right, Jeremiah.
No, nobody beats him. I mean, I've been of that opinion for years now. I mean, Lomachenko is just
the question. The question was, who do you want to see him fight that you think has the best chance?
It's Mikey Garcia. I mean,
right.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, but granted that it's Mikey Garcia, I would love to see that fight happen. I mean, Garcia is a bit bigger. He's highly technical. He's got great power. I mean, if there's anything that's it's a saving grace for him, it is that power. I mean, he's got one punch power at 126, 130, 135, maybe not quite so much, even though he looked like it against Latichinen. But, I'd also like to see a fight with Jorge Linares if Garcia and Linares don't happen to get together before that. I mean, I don't think Linares could beat Vasil Lomachenko, but I think it would be a nice technical match for a little while. Some people may say Gervonta Davis has a shot. I don't really see that. As explosive as he is offensively, he just lacks the nuance. He lacks the boxing brain to hang with a guy like Lomachenko. I mean, Lomachenko he's schooled arguably the two fastest fighters in boxing in Gary Russell Jr. and Guillermo Rigondeaux. So, Davis doesn't really pose much of a threat, in my opinion. And like, Einrenhofer alluded to, there's a lot of brawlers and come forward guys at 130 who, just kind of play into his hands. I don't know if, I don't see Top Rank's prospect, Felix Verdejo. I know they fought in the amateurs and Lomachenko won pretty clearly, but from what I've seen, Verdejo is never going to be on that level, so I just don't see anything. I mean, but Lomachenko has good competition. It's not like it's not out there. So if Lomachenko could beat a guy like Linares and Garcia, maybe get a guy like Frampton or Santa Cruz moving up, he'd have a damn good resume to rest his career on. But we just got to make the fights.
All right, so let's go ahead to that wonderful undercard that Top Rank and Bob Arum gave us. We had Christopher Diaz, KO3 over Bryant Cruz. John Einrenhofer, what was your take there? Diaz looks like a good fighter, but I'd like to see him fight a little bit better competition.
Yeah, Diaz looks like a decent fighter, but that's that Top Rank stuff we're talking about. That was just a mismatch. If you're going to give us Conlon and Stevenson on the way up, if you're going to even show that stuff, you've got to have something better than that Diaz fight, leading up to the Lomachenko.
Well, see, right now, John, I think that Stevenson and Conlon are two guys that should have been on the card because that's how you build fighters. But as you said, this other fight's got to be better than this.
Right. Well, you build fighters, but casual fans don't want to see fighters, and we know there's not really any casual boxing fans left for the most part. But you'd like to develop some. Let's face it. That's one of the reasons you're on ESPN, and that's why I can see. Okay, if you want to expose Stevenson and Conlon, probably not both on the same night, though. To tell you the truth, unless you're going to have a lot more better fights leading up to the Rigondeaux Lomachenko than that Diaz fight. Like then, if you had another good one, really. Something like PBC did on Friday night. It can be, and they're doing next Friday night. It can be done. It was done in the old days all the time. It's not rocket science. It's just called making competitive fights instead of just making your cards infomercials for the mysterious big fight that's supposed to come down the road that never really comes. It just ends up being some pay-per-view fight that shouldn't be on pay-per-view. That's been the problem the last 25 years. So that's what I'd like to see us get away from. And this Top Rank card tonight was just an example of all the worst offenses of it and what's hurt the popularity of boxing. I always try to envision, if I have a friend who's a casual fan of boxing or not a casual fan of boxing but used to like it, might want to get back into it, you tell them to turn on to something like tonight, they're never going to turn it on again. That's the test I always use in my mind. If I told a friend to watch this, would I be embarrassed the next morning, or would I be proud that I told them to watch it? This would be one that I'd feel like I wasted somebody's time.
Yeah, like we wasted ours.
Yeah.
Also, we had Shakur Stevenson, Mick Conlon. I'll just go around real quick. I'm not overly impressed with either one. I mean, Stevenson has a tendency to throw a jab and put it down by his waist right away, which tends to be a bad idea when somebody's swinging at you. I'll start off with John Raspani. John, what do you think of Stevenson and Conlon?
I thought that was the best Stevenson has looked. I saw a couple of his other fights, and he looked like an amateur in there. And Timothy Bradley nailed it. He said he needed to sit down on his punches a little more, and he seemed to be doing that to me. And that was, obviously the competition was lacking, but He got in there. He got rid of the guy pretty quick, really quick. He was hitting him with pretty much anything he wanted to. I thought he looked pretty good. Conlon, that was interesting because I've seen him one other time, and he's got a great personality and a great smile and all that. And he's playing with his style, though, and I always wonder about that when boxers do that. He's trying to fight the Mexican style to give the fans something. I thought he was okay. I actually wasn't all that impressed, to be completely honest. I thought he was fine.
From what I've seen, I'm more impressed with Stevenson going forward than I am Conlon.
Yeah, it was okay, but I just he was just making silly mistakes, it looked like to me, and I just, with all the hype, you kind of expect a little bit more, and he didn't. It was only okay to me.
All right, John, other John.
Yeah, I thought Stevenson. I agree with John Responte. That was the best I saw Stevenson look. What I liked about what Stevenson did tonight was, I think he, in a good way, tried to respond to, some of the flaws he showed in his first, few fights as a pro. He's still only 20 years old. He just was not, landing with authority on weak competition, and he made some of those adjustments tonight. Of course, the way boxing does it, and that does go farther back, so we can't say that that's all new. He was just in with a guy that gave him absolutely no resistance. I actually thought the referee did what she had to do in stopping the fight, despite what some of the announcers were saying, because the guy that Stevenson was in there with was just offering nothing back, absolutely nothing. And so when there's just nothing incoming at you, that's the thing. So I thought Stevenson, we saw the signs of the adjustments he needs to make, and that's a plus for him, and he looked better. But with just nothing incoming, the jury's still going to be out at this point.
So you think Sparkle Lee did a good job tonight?
I think Sparkle Lee did do a good job.
Do you think that she's Spike Lee's love child or something?
I thought she got it right. It was just a ridiculous mismatch where the guy was just not offering anything in return from the opening bell, and it was just like you couldn't let it go on.
All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty much in line with your guys' thinking. I mean, the thing about Conlon is, we talked about this before, Mike. I mean, he's an Irish guy. There's a lot of appeal there. So if anything, I think Top Rank is as much as I don't like Bob Arum or just about most of the promoters in boxing, Bob Arum knows how to maneuver a guy. I mean, he's going to put Conlon in a position probably to fight for some alphabet trinket, probably win an alphabet trinket. I mean, he was able to maneuver Zhu Shiming into a title contention quickly, and to me, Conlon looks a bit better than Shiming did. Funny enough, Shiming was significantly better amateur, but yeah, Conlon. Again, he's an Irish guy. He's going to fight on the East Coast. He's going to get his shot. He's not a bad fighter. I mean, he's a good fighter. I mean, at that weight, where the competition is slightly thinner, I think he'll do pretty well. But against the best, the best of the best guys, it's just too early to tell. But I just don't see anything special there. I do like the fact that he can switch southpaw. It looks a bit unnatural, but he's pretty good from that, which kind of adds another dimension to his game. It's always nice to have it on hand if you can do it. I mean, I remember when Shane Mosley switched southpaw against Oscar De La Hoya in the first fight, near the end of the fight, just for the sake of it, and he looked pretty good. And then I don't remember him ever doing that before, come to think of it. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's a nice little wrinkle in his game, but his power doesn't look anything special. His speed is pretty good. His accuracy is pretty good, but he'll get his chance.
All right, guys, real quick before we go across the pond to England to look at today's fights in England, we're going to take a quick minute break to check out a word from our sponsor, mybookie.ag. We'll be back in a minute.
Hey, Puckheads, this is Patrick.
And Jason.
From the Puck Guys podcast at the Grueling Truth Network, and we're here with one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money.
The Grueling Truth has partnered with MyBookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.ag.
In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and MyBookie.ag will give you a 50% bonus on your first deposit of up to $3,000 in extra cash. Just enter the promo code TGT50. That's TGT50 to take advantage of this offer. Where do they got to go, Jay?
That is a smart-looking question, Pat. They need to go to visitmybookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth Network, and enjoy your winning today.
MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, we're back on the Grueling Truth Live Fight Night Recap, looking back at Lomo and Rigo and everything else that happened. I'm here. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, with my co-host, John Raspani, John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Pricer. And with the Johns, one of you guys, we're going to have to change your name here pretty soon, so I don't have to say your last name, because Einreinhofer's got a long name. Let's go ahead. We'll start over to Pond. Let's look at the fights from today. And as Jeremiah and John knows, I always love to talk about Daniel Dubois. He had a second-round knockout today. What was your take on Dubois, John Raspani?
He looked good. I'm pretty high on the kid too. He's got a ton of power. He was fighting a guy that Anthony Joshua fought a few years ago, and Joshua put him away, I believe, in the second round as well.
He went the distance with Fury.
Okay, well, you can't crack an egg though, right?
Know.
So, but he's a powerful kid, and he's 6-0 now with 6 knockouts. I like his style. He brings it. He believes in himself already. He's got a great future. It's just we got to. This is going to sound terrible, but it's just the way it is. About got to see him in there with somebody who's alive, instead of some corpse.
Right.
So
Exactly.
And then we'll find
unfortunately, John, there's only like 5 of those guys in the heavyweight division.
It's pretty sad.
True.
Yeah. So we got to see, but he's got some skills, no doubt about it. And so I'm excited about his future, and he seems to get it as far as what he's doing and where he's going. So he's going to be fun to watch.
All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah, no, I agree there too. I mean, Dubois looks like he has some power. I just want to see him against, I want to see him step it up in competition. I want to see what there are a lot of guys who look about as good as him coming up. It's just, he's got to step up the competition, and, then I really have to, I really get to see what he's working with. But he looks good so far. I mean, I understand why a lot of the Brits are high on him. And it's always exciting to have a power puncher, coming up through the ranks, especially for the Brits, because there aren't a ton of them. A lot of the prospects aren't heavy hitters. He kind of looks a change up from that. But yeah, I'll continue to watch for him and see what he provides in the future. And again, I just need to see him against better competition before I make a more nuanced judgment.
All right, John.
Yeah, I feel about the same. I always give a guy credit for, at least getting people out of there, taking care of the business. It's early on, but at least the one thing you can do then is get the guy out of there. So he's doing that. And as Jeremiah said, I agree also. Traditionally, the Brits style-wise don't have a lot of big punchers. So you got at least a potential big puncher there, but it's just so early on with the lack of competition. But I agree with what you said, Mike. Yeah, the heavyweight division, we keep getting to a point where we're thinking it's getting more promising, and it has gotten a little better than the way it was during the Vladimir Klitschko run. There's no doubt about that. But with that said, there's just no depth there. There's really you're barely getting a good top 10, and then you get below that, and there's nothing there. So there really isn't a lot to test anybody.
Hey, I would take Dubois over Joseph Parker right now.
Joseph Parker has not looked good at all. That's why he's in my top 10. I got to say, again, with the way the division is, he's in my legit top 10, even if you're ranking 8 divisions. But I have to give the guy that. But once I get that out of the way, he just hasn't looked good at all, against just slightly higher competition. And I'm not excited at all about this prospect of him fighting Joshua. I think Joshua just blows him away.
Yeah, we'll get that to in a minute when we talk about the Ortiz fight from Friday night. We had Lee Selby. He either defended or didn't defend his title because Eduardo Ramirez didn't make weight. Selby won a boring decision, as he usually does, 119 to 109, 116 to 112, 118 to 110. Anybody want to comment on this?
Just the Ramirez, this is where, of course, I'm watching that on the British feed like everybody else, and it's interesting to hear some different perspectives. But the way the British commentators will build up some of these opponents and always emphasize that it's a quote unquote title fight, always makes me laugh. The Ramirez guy just, he really didn't bring much to the table because he didn't make weight. He didn't. His punching technique was not good. He just didn't bring much to the table. Selby has some boxing skill. And he's a good boxer. He has some Americanized movements to him too, the way he boxes. But the big problem, as we all know, is he can't punch at all. And his competition in recent years has been very weak. They're talking about his upcoming competition. Again, they're building up another British matchup, but it's not legit top 10 competition. And I think that what I've got to conclude with Lee Selby, I think the handwriting's on the wall now is he just hasn't fought anybody now for so long that if he ever gets a fight with one of the big guys in the division, he's not going to be prepared anymore because it's just been too long. So it's going to be more of a fading away for him than anything. And I think the guy can't fight except for his lack of power. That's the Achilles heel, is the guy just can't punch. And then when you put him in a mismatch and he can't punch, it's just a boring fight. So it's poor matchmaking, and they're getting away with it there because you're calling it an IBF title fight. And except tonight it wasn't an IBF title fight then after all, but you're calling it a title fight, typical of today's boxing, even though again Selby's in my legit top 10, even if you rank 8 divisions. But you get away with then these crummy challengers, and it's just not exciting.
All right, Jeremiah, you got any comments on Selby, or do you pass?
No, real quick, I'll just say that Selby does have some skill. There were some times when he got caught with a number of punches that you just don't like to see out of that. I don't know if it was ring rust or whatnot, but Selby's got some good skill. But the build-up with Josh Warrington is just not. That's not. I really don't. There's nothing there for me, really. I mean, Warrington, I've watched. He's got a big following, a big rabid following, but he's really a fringe type guy. I mean, he has a high work rate, but he's got virtually no punching power. So when you're a come forward guy and maybe you throw a lot, but you can't cut off the ring, Selby I think is going to box his ears off. But if they ever get in there with Frampton, that would be a fight that would be worthwhile if they're going to make a domestic matchup. Wasting your time with guys like Josh Warrington. Again, I'm just not into it. But Frampton, Selby, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight take place, but of course, I'd favor Frampton there.
Yeah, just because Frampton can punch. I like Selby. Seems like a good guy. I think he's got some talent, but as John Raspani would say, can't break an egg.
No, he can't, and his fights are pretty much the same. I mean, when you watch him, he's a good boxer. We don't want to take that away from him. He moves well. He can box. He's got a good jab. And the guy I was fighting with today, I mean, you had a double whammy here. Two guys that can't break eggs. I mean, Selby's got like 9 KOs, I think, and this guy Ramirez has 7 coming into the fight, and I guess he took off during the week and everything. So there was all this turmoil going on before the fight, but Selby is what he is, and he'll win some fights, and I would love to see him in there with Frampton. I think Frampton would push him and really make him fight hard, and Frampton would beat him, I believe. But Selby is pretty much done all he can do with his ability. So now at some point he's going to have to step up and go to another level if he wants to. I don't know. They've got that title over there and they want to keep it over there. So we'll just have to see. But I don't mind watching the guy fight because he has some skills. But it's just like watching the same movie, and you always know how the ending's going to be because you've seen it so many times. So we'll have to see what happens with him.
Yeah, but the good thing about these fights, but at fifth round, you're getting in like a good half-hour nap.
Well, yeah, okay, that's true. I'm in my chair napping, but then I can't write about it because I missed half the fight.
Yeah, you can, because you saw it. The first 5 rounds are the
saw
same as the next
times.
7.
As somebody, I'm plagiarizing myself. Yes, right.
All right, next up, we have a reason why alphabet titles are bad, as DeGale-Truex today became a belt holder. He is a super middleweight champion as he won a majority decision over James DeGale. DeGale is obviously shot. I think we talked about this on our last show, John Einreinhofer, and I think it proved more than true today against Truex.
Yeah, of course, I'm not going to claim I called this one. Truex was actually on one site I saw it was an 85-1 underdog. Got to be arguably upset of the year. But I did allude to the fact that, and I said it before the fight, so I said I thought that, the beating that DeGale took against Jack, and the way, even he looked before that, he got a gift against Jack with that draw. I thought that there was a good, I did say it before the fight, I thought there was a good chance he was done, and he is done. And that's not to disrespect James DeGale. He's a guy I like watching fight because he provides entertaining fights, but when you watch him fight, you just always, even before the Jack fight, you always had that feeling like he could do more. I mean, he's got the amateur pedigree. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He always has flashes where he looks like he's got the skill to do more, and just for whatever reason, he could never do it consistently. In a fight, he starts laying on the ropes. He takes shots. I mean, he had trouble with Porky Medina. That's when you really could see that there was something missing there. And it just became a pattern, and he took the beating against Jack. That's where it caught up to him there because he took a physical beating in that fight. He got by in some of the other fights, but he took a physical beating against Jack. And he took a physical beating against DeGale-Truex. If you look
and to be fair, John, even though we thought that DeGale was old, especially you, none of us came close to envisioning this happen.
No, DeGale-Truex had lost to Jermaine Taylor, who was shot. He dropped Taylor, but he lost to him. He got stopped in the 12th round by Daniel Jacobs, and then the thing that stuck out like a sore thumb that we all looked at is Anthony Durrell blew him away in a round. So you just didn't see against any upper level of competition where Truex was going to have enough. Ironically, of course, before the fight, I didn't think this was going to be enough, but I look at it now, and the guy was obviously for real. I did check out some of his stuff on Twitter, and he had pictures of himself chopping wood before the fight, saying he was working hard and seemed real serious. But again, I thought, well, he's just not going to be able to do it. But when you saw the way he fought today, let's give him credit. I mean, he came. 2 guys impressed me this weekend with their fighting spirit, and I didn't expect it from either of them. And it was Jean Pascal and DeGale-Truex, and those 2 guys came to fight. It wasn't expected, and they came with a lot of heart and a lot of spirit, and it made the difference for both of them, and definitely Truex, because he took it to DeGale. DeGale's face was all swelled up after the fight, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I think you can when you looked at his face, and you heard him in the post-fight interview. It almost seemed to me like he was a hair woozy. He wasn't really making sense, and I don't think the future is good for James DeGale. Of course, he's got the right to do what he wants, but I don't think the future is good for him. Now, Truex, he's with PBC and Al Heyman, and I think I would guess probably that Al Heyman will reward him with a good payday. He does take care of his fighters, but maybe he'll have to be sacrificed to Benavidez or something like that, which despite how well he fought today, I just don't see much of a chance for him with a guy with Benavidez' power. Although Benavidez did not look good against Reveal.
But, John Raspani, I think this is the great thing about boxing. Everybody likes a Rocky story, and that's what you got today. A guy who's given no chance, goes to a foreign country. I mean, really, this fight was comparable to Rocky when he beat Ivan Drago, don't you think?
Well, size-wise, Drago was about 19 inches taller than Sylvester Stallone, right? So I don't really want to go there, Mike. But, I love these, too. I'm a sucker for these kind of stories. And when I watched it, I was the guy, some guys win a title and you can tell they're happy, maybe because it's expected. It was almost like Truex. Around the fourth or fifth round, he was like, hey, I can win this. I really can win this. I can become a champion here. And when he got the decision, which when they first announced it, 114, he went, because I thought the same thing. Well, here it comes.
Yeah.
He was legitimately emotional about it. I mean, there was no faking going on. The guy was thrilled. And I like that. I like it when this happens because he's a great guy. I think you told me you've talked to him. I've spoken with him. He's a super guy, very modest guy. You wonder sometimes. Fighters always say, look, I'm going there to win and everything. And, okay, they say that, but they know that the odds are against it. They know who they're fighting. But his timing was right. And DeGale, you guys are right. He's only had, 25 fights. And that's the thing about boxing. A guy can get old or be shot, and it just happens. After a war or whatever. He said he came back too soon. I don't want to come back, in 5 years? I mean, he's 31 years old. The future does not look very good, but I loved it. I loved seeing what Truex did. I mean, even if he makes one defense or loses it, whatever, at least the guy can say I'm a world champion. And he did it. And but one more thing about DeGale, I remember when they were talking about DeGale maybe possibly fighting Andre Ward, and I was going, you got to be kidding me, because I never was that impressed with the guy anyway. I mean, he's pretty good and he's a champ and all that, but I never thought Andre Ward would have had him for lunch. So, but again, back to Rocky Truex, I thought it was a great victory for the guy, and I was actually very happy for him.
Yeah, and we are working on getting him on the Inside Boxing Weekly show here in the next week or two,
cool.
Jeremiah.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But one thing that I would say about just to add a little tidbit to the James DeGale situation, what it does, and I know a lot of British fans are probably upset by this, but it ruins the proposition of having James DeGale fight a guy like Chris Eubank Jr. or Groves or whoever emerges from that WBSS tournament, whether it's Smith, Groves, or Eubank, and even if somebody loses competitively, imagine if Groves outboxes Eubank, edges him, or vice versa. I mean, there's a lot to be had, on the domestic scene there. But this just kind of ruins it. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing, but kudos to Truex. I mean, he looked fantastic.
All right, then we go to the Friday night PBC show, which was actually entertaining. We're going to start off with Ortiz, KO2 over Daniel Martz. Ortiz, I'm sorry. I don't know why, Jeremiah, they just didn't have him fight and just let him and Wilder talk shit to each other in the middle of the ring, because that seemed to me that was the only reason he had a fight against Daniel Martz. And I want to meet the 13 guys that Daniel Martz knocked out.
Well, he's from Einrenhofer's neck of the woods, if I'm not mistaken. I thought he said he was from West Virginia, so probably beat up all sorts of.
From Clarksburg, West Virginia, and there's not a big boxing scene in West Virginia, but I am familiar with some of the guys that are on it, of course, doing what we all do here. And I was not familiar. That's what caught me, because as soon as that came up, I was not familiar with Daniel Martz. And I literally thought I knew who every fighter in the state was. And,
Martz was.
That's when I said, "Oh my God, this is not going to be good for the state of West Virginia."
The brother of Mike Martz, right? He's like 50 years old, right? Mike Martz's brother or something, right? The ex-coach, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
No, right. I mean, that's when I got scared right off.
I was going to say Martz was probably beating up a lot of banjo pickers. I don't know. Hard to say.
You're going to offend John. Chill out.
No,
if you want a really little inside connection with you, which you don't need, but I think it's probably how it happened, is and John Responte would remember this. Jeremiah studies his history; he would too. But you remember Tommy Franco Thomas, who fought Michael Dokes?
Michael Dokes knocked him out late, made him bleed all over the place.
And he was, the WBC liked him. I think he was even in their top 10. It was one of those type things.
He was in his top 10 when he fought Dokes, because he fought Dokes on, I think, NBC Sports World back in the early 80s.
Yeah, well, he fought Dokes on that Snipes Holmes undercard.
Mm-hmm. Sure about that? Dokes fought Gardner on that undercard.
I think that was a different one, but
I'll bet you $1 million.
Well, don't bet against Mike.
I think that was the home Snipes.
The sick thing is this: I watched Dokes against Franco Thomas like a month ago.
All right, see there you go. So good segue there. So Franco Thomas is related. Jerry Thomas was the big promoter in West Virginia. He's out of Clarksburg. So and Franco Thomas was related to him. And I'm just saying, when I saw the Clarksburg pop up, I was thinking that, I don't know what's left of the old promotional operation up there, but I was thinking, maybe that was just some big guy that they literally saw walking around town up in Clarksburg and said, "You're going to be our heavyweight." That would not have shocked me. So I knew it was going to be bad, and of course it was. But
now, can you get us Franco Thomas for the show?
I believe that those guys are still around up there, but I haven't had contact with them. There's another promoter in the state, Steve Simons, I have some contact with, but he's the guy. He's the most active guy handling the local guys around here, and he brings in a lot of Ohio guys. But that's about all you've got,
Well, what was bad was that shit talk in between Ortiz and Wilder. Wasn't into that.
Yeah, the bad language. They got Ortiz language to do it turns you off.
They got Ortiz to do it in English. They got him to do his bad language in English.
Yeah, he had a few cuss words. He had a few discernible cuss words in there, but yeah, it just felt like it dragged on a bit too much. The interviewer didn't take control, so it was all kind of funky for me. But hey, this is the thing, is that I see a lot of boxing fans complain about the decision, that the WBC made, right? So they let Alexander Povetkin circumvent a quote-unquote lifetime ban with $250,000 from his high-rolling promoter, and then they let Luis Ortiz off the hook, for $25,000. And so what happens is you have boxing fans who constantly complain about this sort of stuff, but then they essentially justify their actions by saying, "Oh, well, you know what? I want to see Luis Ortiz versus Deontay Wilder, and we're going to get that fight. At least it's a good fight. It's a step up from, Stavern or anything else that Wilder's been in against."
But Jeremiah is right, though. I think that it does come down to a lot of these issues come down to the fans to me, and that's why I always say it, too, about the alphabet belts and trying to establish real ratings. Same with the PEDs, just what Jeremiah pointed out. You can be lazy as a fan and say, "Oh, I'd still like to see Wilder or Ortiz or see Povetkin fight somebody." But as a fan, you really do need to take a stand and say, these guys are both double offenders. If the fans didn't want to see these guys, they would go away. So, really, fans should. You can never organize a fan boycott. It's never worked in any sport, but it's still, if there's kind of a general thing.
Yeah, but how about this, John? What if the fan boycott turns into Wilder fighting Stavern instead of Povetkin?
Well, that's the excuse the promoters would use, but you want something like Wilder Joshua now.
Yeah, but that's the only fight you got. After that, what do you got? Unless they fight again. Well, they could have them fight best out of 7.
That is where heavyweight's got some problem. There's no doubt about that. But still, you don't want Ortiz and Povetkin to get rewarded. And fans can. There's not an official boycott, but fans get head coaches fired all the time. Things like that. So there can be that groundswell. It can happen. That's why I think it's a real thing that can be done. You can vote with your wallet or your eyes by not watching something, and then they'll eventually listen. So
right,
yeah,
and then why? I was going to say, and how can we expect for the alphabet organizations to act accordingly, or do things that are more conducive to fans' pleasure when again we just justify their actions? So we're like, oh my God, the WBA and their stupid regular title and manual char and this and that, and the WBC and their fake clean boxing program crap where they're letting Francisco Vargas and Luis Nery off with slaps on the wrist, and blame it on tainted Mexican beef and this and and then just getting payoffs from people they claim are on a lifetime ban, and then you have the IBF stripping people on a week's notice, a month's notice, et cetera, et cetera. We complain, but then again, why would they even listen to us if we're just like, oh, okay, well now we're getting now Terrence Crawford is defending this title against this guy, so we all just shut up and sit on our hands and do nothing about it.
Yeah, this is boxing, and this is boxing. I'm sorry I jumped in. I just wanted to add something. And boxing's reputation, as we all know, is so low in a lot of ways. It's pretty pathetic. So anything that happens, I don't think surprises us. We might want something to go a certain way because we feel it's right, but again, this is boxing, and money drives it. If people want to see Ortiz against Wilder, and they're obviously setting that up, even with Luis Ortiz's past, it's going to happen. We know it. Even if it's wrong, even all that stuff, it's going to happen. So, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Boxing has needed a commissioner forever, even though that might be questionable what a commissioner might do. But any kind of standard like that has never been set. It's just like the bar gets lower if there's an interest or something that can happen. And as we've been saying, there's really not a lot of depth in the heavyweights. So they want to marinate the Wilder-Joshua fight. They both got to win, and then put them in.
You have to, because if there's no Wilder-Joshua fight, I mean, the only way you can make this palatable to people is have Ortiz against Wilder, and you got Joshua against, I guess, Joseph Parker. Which is better than about any other matchups you could get at the heavyweight division.
Yeah, it's just that I don't want to let them off the hook. Joshua Wilder should happen now. There's no reason for it not to happen now, especially because it is so thin in the division. It should happen now. It doesn't need any marinating. We've all agreed before that just with the state of American boxing, the popularity of the sport in the country, there's nothing you can do really to build Wilder up more in the United States. So, and he got a good rating with his Stavern knockout. It went viral on the internet. So, he's probably, close to about as high as he's going to get here. Joshua's already very big in the UK. He's not really going to get any bigger. The fight needs to happen. We don't need, the promoters trying to pick up another payday by, Joshua blasting out Parker. And, Wilder Ortiz, we don't want Ortiz to get this shot because of the PEDs, but in terms of a fight, if it's going to happen, it's a little more interesting. But I'd rather not see it at this point. Ortiz, two-time offender, he shouldn't be out there. But I think Wilder wins that fight anyway. So let's just get to the Joshua Wilder now. That's another thing I'd like to see fan pressure on. Let's get right to Joshua Wilder.
But see, this is the thing. It's not that big of a fight. It's just not. It is for boxing fans, but I think they're trying to create a way where it becomes a big fight for other people. I don't see how they can pull that off, but I think that's what they're thinking, because Wilder and Joshua are not Holmes and Cooney. They're not going to be on the front of Time magazine. And I think they can build it into something that big.
No, I don't think they think that at all. I think they just want to pick up a payday for having them fight lesser opponents, and I wouldn't be surprised if they each fight another no-hoper after their next fight. So I think it's just about picking up more paydays, because they do know what you said. This is not the Holmes-Cooney era. They're not building this up where these guys are going to have mainstream popularity.
Well, they're not the Holmes-Cooney era because, number one, they're not both Americans. Only one of them is. Neither one of them are white, which we all know sells. I mean, hell, why do you think Mick Conlan in his first fight, Madison Square Garden, can sell it out? Plus, skill-wise, neither one of them could touch Holmes or Cooney.
Salido just got knocked out, so there goes another Lomachenko opponent.
Well, and there goes me watching it after this show and being surprised.
Sorry about that.
Spoiler.
That's all right. We're going to have to take... I didn't
bed.
know they
I'll
had
get you to
TVs in West Virginia.
I'll get you to bed. I'll get you to bed earlier. So.
Heck of a fight, though, Mike. A definite war. So if you
Oh,
want to
good.
war,
Well, that Raven rose it more. Let's
yeah, okay.
Jeremiah, you want to chime in?
Could have just lied and said it was a terrible fight. Yeah.
No, well, unfortunately, I haven't been watching it because I'm doing this on my laptop, and if I start streaming something,
we're trying to pay attention to what we're talking about. We're not trying to watch TV.
Come on, guys.
No, it's live.
It's kind of a novel thing for John. It's a novel thing for Onrine Hoffer. He's like, I'm watching TV.
He's in a hotel room somewhere that had TV just outside of the state line in Ohio.
It's live. It's live. It's live. Remember, that's why the show wouldn't have.
PEDs in West Virginia are beef jerky because all the extra protein. All right, next up, we're going to go to Jean Pascal, who looked like he was 7 years younger against Ahmed El Abiali, which luckily he got beat, so I don't have to say his name at too much more, hopefully. But Pascal, I mean, he looked like a top 10 fighter, John.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was shocked with how well Pascal fought. Of course, El Bialy did. I think it was good that he took the risk. You got to take some risks, but he's just a come forward destroyer, and the fact that that's all he had in his game, and Pascal does have a good chin. That was kind of his downfall there. But added to that was the fact that Pascal, I'm going to give him props. He fought much harder at age 35 than I expected him to. He was much more committed offensively than I've seen in recent fights. Of course, he's not in with some of the guys he has been in with, but still, there was an improvement there. I thought maybe El Bialy's corner stopped at a hair early. I thought maybe they could have let that go on a little longer. But, it was a great performance by Pascal. El Bialy probably, he can step back because this might have been a little bit of a premature step. He could step back his competition, let's say for 5-6 fights, and maybe be back. He does have power, but he's going to have to add a little bit to his game. At least he just has never shown any defensive skills whatsoever, and he didn't even know how to survive last night. So. It was a very interesting fight, and it was a good action fight while it lasted as well. There was some good back and forth action, but really the commitment Pascal had in that fight really surprised me, and he showed enough that should he choose to continue, unfortunately the division he's in is so tough that he might get a good payday against one of these guys that nobody else wants to fight, and he might take a beating. But he's earned the right to do that with the kind of performance he had last night. That if he wants to continue on, he's shown he's still legitimate.
See, this is the thing, John. Sorry, Jeremiah, but my point is this: with Pascal, most of these guys in the light heavyweight division that we're impressed with have never really proven anything yet. So if you're Pascal and you want to take a shot at a Thomas Williams or a few of those guys, you never know. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, Marcus Brown would be sort of an interesting fight for Pascal.
That's That's the guy that Thomas Williams got knocked out by. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. So just kind of insert there. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if Adonis Stevenson fought Jean Pascal. I think Pascal would probably come back for that. But I was happy.
Pascal I saw last night, I would give it at least a shot against him.
Yeah, I mean, Pascal looked good. I mean, what I like about him, he's always been a crafty guy. He's always had some nice wrinkles to his game. But when he fought guys who are more crafty, like Bernard Hopkins, that's kind of where he faltered. But he looked good. I mean, I really liked what he did against El Bialy. I mean, because El Bialy, you didn't really know quite what he had going into the fight. Because I know John Einrenhofer and I have been paying attention to him for years now. he had a good right hand. He's definitely a big banger, but he just tried that one dimension stuff with Pascal, and he exposed him completely. I mean, El Bialy kept what he would do is he would pity pat with his jab, and then he would throw a right hand. Well, Pascal was timing it really well and just shoulder rolling, and then popping him with a right hand. And then whenever they would get on the inside, El Bialy had no idea. This is one big knock I have with modern fighters. So few of them know how to fight on the inside. I mean, El Bialy looked completely lost. He didn't set his feet. He just kind of leaned on Pascal. He wasn't digging anything to the body. There was a time or two where he landed some body shots, but on the inside, he just looked like a complete novice, especially against a guy with Pascal's experience. And I want to, quickly insert that Pascal has fought a lot of the best guys of his era, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. But one thing that I found I really enjoyed. If you guys watch the fight, and I'm trying to remember what round it was, but he was whipping Bialy's butt against the ropes, and then he walked back to his own corner and made him come to him. And then it was right before the bell, and then the bell rang, and El Bialy had to walk all the way back across the ring. I just thought that was great. That was such nice veteran savvy. You don't always see stuff like that. But I was happy to see it. I mean, if Pascal's really sticking to his guns and he's retiring, good for him. This is a nice little note to end his career on.
Yeah, John Raspani?
Yeah, I think Jersey Joe Walcott used to do that sometimes, guys. He would walk his fighter.
Good call.
He'd walk away, and then it seemed like he would always end up in his corner when the bell rang, and he'd sit right down, and the other guy would have to walk all the way across the ring. It's a savvy trick. Yeah, I didn't see it, but listening to Jeremiah describing it, that's what I thought of. But I was really happy for Pascal. Talk about a guy who we all, I'm sure, thought was done and past his prime and shot and all those words. I mean, to pull off this victory last night, I mean, that was really phenomenal. It was very impressive. And he just showed sometimes, these guys, they got one more fight, maybe two fights left in them, and with the skill and mostly the experience, because El Bialy, whatever his name is, you could tell he just was like overwhelmed at times. I just saw the highlights. I didn't see the whole fight. He didn't know what to do. Pascal just had too much experience and skill and savvy for him, and you could tell he was just like, geez, I can't deal with this guy. But again, I hope he goes out like this, Pascal, because this is a good way. It's better to go out with a victory, obviously, but I won't be surprised either if he builds off this, and in about 2 or 3 months gets bored and said, hey, look, what am I talking about quitting for? That's the best I've looked in a few years, and he comes back and fights again, and he certainly could get some paychecks. So, but all props to Jean Pascal. It was a great performance.
All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind everybody that you can go check our Legends of Boxing show. Bones Adams was recently put up. Tony the Tiger Lopez will go up in the next few days. A week ago, we had Chuck Wepner. Monday night, we're going to have former WBA heavyweight champion Mike Weaver on the show with me and Jeremiah. John Raspani, the number that I got from Alex Ramos worked. The number from you didn't.
Well, I don't know what to say.
But
got me
John,
on that one,
John Raspani is working on a fairly large guest for us for the Legends of Boxing show, which hopefully we'll be able to announce here shortly. We'll be back with another Inside Boxing Weekly. Of course, we'll have to talk about Jeff the Hornet Horn, who gets no respect from anybody else on this show, but I love the Hornet. So we're going to preview his fight against Gary Corcoran or whoever the hell he's fighting. Doesn't matter because it's Jeff Horn.
Oh, boy.
But also, everybody check us out every Tuesday night on the NFL Weekly Pick'em Show, especially this Tuesday night, because if the Bengals blow out the Bears, John Raspani has to come on the show so I can make fun of him.
Blowout like what? 31-0 or something like that?
3-0's fine with me. I'm a Bengals fan. Anytime we win, I'm just happy because it doesn't happen that often.
I know what you're talking about. Trust me. So
yeah, I know you do. Except for that one year in 1985.
That was great.
All right. Too bad that was like 30-some years ago now.
I don't care. It's Groundhog Day as far as I'm concerned. I
Ain't that a
relive it all
bitch,
the time, Mike.
That's a bitch. I'll be sitting there watching something, and I'm like, that's not that long ago. That was like 1995. And I start thinking, I'm like, well, hell, that's almost a quarter of a century ago now.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll be 49 in 9 days, so make sure you guys give me presents.
Okay. 9 days. All right.
It doesn't sound like John's getting me anything. I know Einreinhofer won't because he always disagrees with me. I know I can depend on Jeremiah, though.
Mike, I'm going to get you a West Virginia pepperoni roll.
West Virginia pepperoni. Is that different
pepperoni
than
roll.
like
pepperoni
Ohio?
roll? Pepperoni roll. Got to get that straight.
Okay, is that different than an Ohio pepperoni roll?
They just got that from West Virginia. It started in West Virginia.
Okay. So did gonorrhea, didn't it?
On that, we'll close the show.
I thought dating your sister started.
Mike's ready for bed. Mike's ready for bed. He will not be watching the HBO Latino fight.
Well, that gonorrhea he got back in '85. Yeah, it's
it did it to him right
wearing,
now.
it's wearing him down.
Are you
And
talking
now we
about
know what happened.
Explains a lot. Yeah.
Hey, gonorrhea
Yeah,
would have put up a
explains a
better
lot.
fight than Rigondeaux did tonight. It wouldn't have quit.
No, it doesn't.
I think the hand was a better excuse.
Okay. The way we were going with that could have been misconstrued in many ways, John.
Yes. That's why everybody shut up right then. It's like, no, not going there.
We knew Mike was the host, so that's why we got in trouble.
That's right. It's Mike's fault. He's the host.
Yeah. It's always my fault when the show goes to hell, as it invariably does when we get past an hour. But I want to thank everybody for listening. Make sure you go to thegruelingtruth.net. You can hear all our shows on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Anywhere you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for John Raspani, John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Pricer, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.